Hello survivors and welcome to First Aid Spray, a Resident Evil podcast by fans for fans. This is episode 104 of the show, and we're abandoning viral agents and instead focusing on our series' parasitic pivot in Virology, Las Plagas. My name is Sai, I am impatiently awaiting Metroid Prime 4, and joining me on the panel this week, if a parasite wanted to make him their host, all they needed to do is leave a mysterious cheese sandwich lying around because he can't resist, and he is James, aka Moist Owlet.
Yeah, I can't resist cheese, you're right.
Found deep underground, presumed there for thousands of years, and assumed to survive for thousands of years more. No, it's not the Plagas, it's Fire Button Steve Valance.
Gloria la Plaga! Hi, everybody.
Every episode of First Aid Spray is recorded live on Discord, so join our server now to become part of our fantastic community that includes Resident Evil diehards and newbies. If you'd like, you can support the show via our merchandise store or over at patreon.com/FASprayPod for as little as $1 a month. All of this and all of our social media links can be found at our website, faspraypod.com. Speaking of Patreons, shout out to our latest supporter, Raikazu. Thank you to Raikazu. Thank you to all of our Patreon supporters for your kind gestures. New content in the pipeline. I know I keep saying it. Time gets away from me. But we'll be putting out some stuff soon and putting some polls out, finding out what you want us to make as we barrel into very, very soon 2026. But before we get to that, let's talk about the Resident Evil headlines.
Resident Evil Requiem's producer says that Leon leaks are fake news and says there won't be a publicly available demo.
This comes, yes, from the mouth of Masato Kumazawa, who's one of the producers on Requiem, spoke to Steve Iver this week, in fact, about RE9 and stuff. And there was, some interesting tidbits. He literally specifically called out one of the leaks. And again, as usual, we don't really talk about leaks on the show, but if you've, seen them, you'll know the one I'm referring to, a certain picture of Leon in an eye patch, which, he described as fake news, which is quite interesting. I think the big news for us, though, as people that don't talk about leaks, I think the big thing coming out of this that I was like, oh, okay, is the lack of a demo for the public. He said that their focus right now is just making sure the game is the best that it can be, and they have no plan for a general public demo at this stage, which is interesting. In the modern era, demos not as readily available as a thing, but of course with Resident Evil, we've had one with most games in the RE Engine era, if not all of them. So this will kind of stop a tradition, I guess, if it turns out to be the case. Steve, any thoughts on these tidbits?
First is a big laughing FU to those who keep purveying the leaks, because I cannot stand seeing sad AI fake Leons on social media. It really does get under my flipping skin at this point. As much as I like Leon, I'll personally kill him myself. Right, but
that's the RE9 spoiler. You see, Steve comes out of a dark corridor and kills Leon.
Yeah. But no, the lack of a public demo, I'm kind of two minds. That's disappointing because, like you said, every other RE Engine game has had one, but also every other RE Engine game that's had one, specifically on PC, has been data mined and stripped, and we know everything before the game's out.
Yeah.
So that can't happen if there isn't a publicly available demo. Which I'm kind of okay with. I like surprises.
Yes, and we are still very much in that part of RE9's promotion where we still know so little, officially speaking, about the game. We've said it over and over again, but what we've seen all appears to be from a certain point in the game and probably doesn't represent the sort of greater package of the game, which is all very exciting, to be honest. We knew too much about Village because of leaks and stuff like that, and I'm hoping we keep it there. We are getting dangerously close. As we record this today, the official Resident Evil account pointed out that it's 100 days until the game now, so we are getting there. So let's keep it up. For me, I completely agree with you. The demo would have been nice. It would have been nice for us to be able to talk about it on the show and something cool for us to cover, but personally, I'm good without it. James, how do you feel about these ones?
Yeah, I'm cool without having a demo as well. It's not needed, I think, because I think the hype is high enough for the game at the moment. They are doing very well with just showing the bare minimum. I mean, obviously it's like hindsight because we don't know what's the entire game is, but I think they're doing quite well at the moment. Just keeping the questions as questions, and not giving enough away. I did notice as well, to play kind of down the middle a second, like he says specifically that picture is fake news of Leon. And he says the AI stuff. He goes on a really long tangent about AI, which big respect, anti-AI. But yeah, he says that specific news about Leon and the eye patch is fake news. So
yes,
if you are a Leon aficionado out there, there's still a chance. But yeah, that particular stuff. Also, I really like the section where he spoke about Outbreak.
Yes.
He was saying that at first it was like he was trying to kind of shoo it away, but then he basically said, yeah, we've taken a lot of kind of inspiration from those games and how forward thinking they were and how important they are to the canon as well, which I thought was a nice nod towards the game, and it's something we're excited about, is learning, I mean, obviously more about Alyssa and stuff. But yeah, overall, a cool interview and like a lot of exciting things, even though not much was said. It's nice when you get confirmation like this. Like Capcom have had to do it a few times now where they've had to say, stop it.
Yeah.
Behave.
Yeah. They're trying to, I get it, they're trying to do their own sort of promotional thing. And obviously lots of people have theories that they're kind of being sneaky about things and lying about things and dropping hints there and whatever. And I think even if that is the case, then they are wanting to play that out. And this game more than ever push for like, oh, Leon's got to be in it or whatever. It's kind of getting in the way of their plans. I'm not saying it's necessarily everyone needs to stop talking about the game and only listen to what Capcom has to say. But you must obviously imagine the people that have put that project together, they are kind of like thrown off. But that's the way these things go. I suppose you put them in the internet and, you don't know what life they're going to take on of their own. To the point about hype, by the way, we didn't put it as a headline here, but it is worth saying hype is high for RE9. At least critically speaking, it is up for most anticipated game for the Golden Joysticks, which is this week, and the Game Awards, of course, it got its nomination this week as well for most anticipated game, which is nice. Next headline, Steve.
Following on Nice Chaser, Resident Evil Requiem pre-orders are now live.
Yes, James and I did a video talking about this. There was a 10-minute video that Capcom put out a few weeks ago now called The Road to Requiem, hosted by our very own Lady D. And yes, it was a bit of a summation of series stuff. Maybe not story, but just general vibe. And then the reveal of what you can expect from Resident Evil 9 in terms of a physical edition and, of course, like the deluxe edition, costumes, this kind of stuff. Steve, what did you make of this?
I know there was a hubbub on social media that a lot of it was RE engine stuff only, which kind of seemed to irk folk.
There was a couple of clips of like 5 and 6 maybe, but that's it.
Yeah. Generally speaking, I'm on board. I love me a deluxe edition with silly costumes. Lady D, I feel like we are reaching threshold pandering, but I'm okay with that. It looks ridiculous enough that I go, you know what, that's kind of neat. And the Apocalypse outfit is very Fallout coded. People were saying it looks like something from the Resident Evil post-apocalypse film. I can't remember which one, the Dusty one.
Extinction.
Yeah.
Extinction, yeah.
To which I'm going to just say, post-apocalypse is a style. It's not just a one film. Let's not tar Grace just yet. Obviously guns and charms, which means there is a high chance of moddable weapons in this, which to my mind says cool stuff is going to happen. I don't know if we're going to get a merchant, but I sense it in the weeds.
Yes, overall, pretty much agree. I made some of these points in the video, but a little bit of a shame for them not to talk about the real classic stuff, considering we are moving towards the 30th anniversary, and I hope they do celebrate those games a little bit when we hit that milestone, or a little bit more than they already have. The Resident Evil's first ever first-person title, when they talked about RE7, really made me mad, but that's a whole other thing. But in terms of the package, yeah, I've got my pre-order in because, we've got to pre-order it, we're going to cover it, so if nothing else. And I did some research today one of the things they announced that I was really interested in was the Generation Pack, which is the Switch 2 physical release for 7, Village, and RE9 together. They are physical cases with, those Switch 2 key cards in rather than the games being on the cartridge themselves. It's looking like that this isn't coming to the UK, though, unfortunately. So if you are in the UK and probably Europe as well, you might well have to import this if you're looking to add it to your collection, because it wouldn't be against Capcom track history with collections, Resident Evil collections on the Switch. I imported the Revelations one a long time ago, but most of these collection packs haven't come to the UK, so I guess I'll be getting one from the US. Thankfully, though, the Switch 2 is region free. You will just have to have an American Nintendo account to potentially download anything from the eShop, but you can physically insert a cartridge. Now, nobody knows for sure what's going to happen when you put a game key card in, so maybe wait to see what happens, but, it's worth putting that out there for the people that were considering the Generation Pack that live in the UK and potentially Europe to consider.
So our last piece of news this week. Resident Evil Survival Unit is out now.
I've absolutely just punched my microphone and went flying. Hang on, let me just make sure everything's in the right.
You microphone.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair reaction, really.
Okay, we're still recording. It's fine. I'm leaving it in. Yeah, that's it, really. I don't think we're going to talk about the game too much. So our thoughts are on the Discord a bit and social media a bit. But I think we're going to save our full breakdown of the game until we talk about it. We'll get a podcast episode, of course, but that won't be until early next year. So yes, Survival Unit, the Resident Evil mobile game, is out now. Okay, that'll do it for the news. Let's move into the main subject of this episode, which is Virology Las Plagas. Las Plagas? What do you reckon? Oh, one of them, both of them. And now, reading the file Methods for Eradicating Las Plagas from Resident Evil 4 2023, Inktoonist VA, who you can find on Blue Sky at Inktoonist.
There are 2 ways to eradicate Las Plagas: antigen injection and surgery. If the parasite has not hatched yet, it can be treated by administering antigen directly into the body. Once it has hatched, however, there's not much that can be done besides slow its growth. With surgery, the plaga can be targeted and killed using a certain wavelength of radiation, but this is not without its risk. If the parasite attached itself to the host's nervous system, the host will experience excruciating pain, and there is no effective anesthesia for this kind of procedure. Surgical removal carries considerable risk, even before the parasite has fully developed. Once fully grown, however, it is too late. Removing the parasite would kill the host, but considering what will happen to them, death may be a mercy.
Long overdue return to the Virology series, the big lore breakdown sub-series of the podcast. And yes, we are doing the pivot away from viral agents and into parasites. First debuting in Resident Evil 4 as part of the many, many changes that came with that game. Of course, tonally, stylistically, gameplay-wise, even kind of the abandonment of the majority of the story drive that the series was leading up to at that point, to go on a bit of a solo European excursion with Leon, and of course the death of Umbrella, and yeah, a switch up of things in terms of where our enemies are coming through and the parasites. And before we actually talk about the lore of the Las Plagas and kind of go through that story, just wanted to know everyone's sort of out of canon thoughts on the choice to pivot away from viruses into the series. We were 9 years into the franchise at this point. Did we need such a strong change away when everything was building up to Umbrella? And in retrospect, was it the right thing to do? Steve, what do you think?
In retrospect, it was definitely the right call. Like, at the time, I'll be frustrated because it's not an Umbrella product, or at least it wasn't at the time. You know, it wasn't in any way attached to. Obviously, that's been retconned since. But now, in the hindsight of things, it's a shake-up because we had that many games of fundamentally zombies, hunters, or lickers. You know, lickers are available. doing the same things, and
Capcom
then
know it.
various other boss monsters. And this is an entire roster change up. Even that the baseline enemy, instead of a shambling corpse trying to eat you, is now a man swearing obscenities and chucking hatchets at you. And they react differently to combat. They have tactical thoughts, or at least intonations of tactical thoughts, where they're trying to surround the player or barricade the player or whatnot. And then they bring out a frigging chainsaw and knock your head off. So it's a just definite threat level increase. So I do feel like at the time I was frustrated, like a lot of us old heads are, with like, what about taking our umbrella? This is an umbrella. But
Exact words.
yeah, recontextualizing it in the grand scheme of time, it's a palate cleanse. It's a change up. And to be fair, the zombies that succeed RE4, I'm looking directly at RE6, not so much the remakes, but RE6 were kind of rubbish.
Yeah, I think you're right in terms of. I imagine first and foremost, the gameplay was the important thing to get right. But the changes to gameplay kind of necessitated a change in enemy behaviours. And unless they were going to suddenly start evolving the zombies and start saying that, oh, we've got a new T-virus, but this one allows you to talk and, throw hatchets and stuff, this kind of makes sense. And obviously makes sense of their wider idea of doing a bit of a kind of a soft reboot.
We did dodge a bullet. Then they call it the P-virus.
Oh, goodness, imagine. Yeah, like, it's not to the same extent of RE7 being a bit of a reboot, but obviously RE4 is a similar sort of thing where it's like, right, let's detach from everything that's come before. Let this be a bit of an entry point for new people. As is many way in series. Occasionally, you just get to a numbered entry in a series when you're making it and go, are we getting too far into the weeds here? Or we got to do something to get some new audience in? And RE4 is clearly that as well. James, what do you think about the pivot to the parasite?
I found it really refreshing, especially like when we went from when Steve and I did our playthrough, we went from kind of virus-centered biothreats to parasite centered ones. Like it was quite refreshing. It was like, okay, we've gone from chaos to kind of order. You know what I mean? Which we'll talk about a little bit later on, and I'll talk about it. But yeah, it opened up a lot. Like it opened up the world. It opened up a little bit more of the story, and the storytelling possibilities as well. They really went with that in following games as well. It felt, rather than kind of like viruses, they're so uncontrollable, and they're just like, and kind of those previous games are all with viruses in them were all about kind of controlling the virus. This is similar, but it feels more organic. Feels more like, to me, it felt like it was more tied to the foundations, a little bit easier. If that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense for folks. It's not just about the disease, it's about that domination, the manipulation. It's not just a zombie outbreak, it's something different this time. I like that. But yeah, as Steve said, like on the flip side, it's it did risk itself from distancing people who were familiar with viruses and viral outbreaks. And I would understand if people kind of got kind of raised their eyebrows and sniffed at it, knowing, wanting more, I think, probably from traditional viruses. But yeah, overall, I think it's a strong pivot, deepens the universe, without really replacing much, which is one of my favorite things about a lot of Resident Evil.
Yeah. I at first, I was one of the old heads that Steve was referring to, making extended noises of that kind. But that was to do with all of Resident Evil 4, and this was just a part of it. I was so much about RE4 when it came out that I was just like, wow, I don't like they changed the gameplay. Where's the fixed camera angles? Where's Umbrella? Why have they done this? Where? And obviously part of that was, oh, where are the zombies? Now we're just fighting angry Spaniards. But I think out of all of the changes, if I had to put a thinking cap on back then, it was the most agreeable of them, of all of those changes. And even in retrospect, would I have loved the continuation of the Umbrella storyline? Yeah, because it would have been a hell of a lot neater considering how badly Capcom has tried to reach back to it after they've killed it over the last 20 years. But this is a strong, interesting new direction for the series. It was at the time. It still kind of feels that way now. I really love how it presents a similar, familiar kind of horror, but certainly different. It's like an even more extreme version of, the hubris of that Resident Evil has running through it. And all these, sci-fi series, what can man wrought upon himself, meddling with something that you don't understand, that you have the mad science of Umbrella. But this is something else entirely because it's this weird ancient thing. And as well, and I know zombie media is in a much different place now than it was in 2005, but it doesn't take long for people to figure out via watching zombie movies and playing zombie games, because it's a scene in 50% of them where somebody's infected and a loved one goes, "No, don't shoot my ex," and the hero's like, "They're already dead." Like, that's how everyone feels playing a zombie game. It's like, I can't, oh well, they're a zombie now, so I have to kill them. It sucks, but that's it. Survival is important. But with the Ganado, for example, something feels like it's puppeteering them. It's not just someone you knew is now down to base instincts and just wants to eat. The Ganado, something much creepier to it because they can communicate. They go about their lives, We know they're like continuing to farm. They're going to church and all this stuff. So whilst the horror in RE4's gameplay was very much toned down, the creepiness of the Ganado, when you actually think about it, is probably higher than the zombies in that case, because there is more questions about what is living, what is dead, and that kind of stuff. And obviously we see that in the game's credits in particular as a great display of that. Let's get into it then. Let's talk about the origins of Las Plagas a little bit. The first this is all, I should point out, with every Virology episode, that this episode will be filled with quotes from the ResidentEvilPodcast.com, our good friends over at the Resident Evil Podcast, and their incredible encyclopedia of Resident Evil knowledge, both the timeline and the encyclopedia itself. I'll be reading parts of the encyclopedia today, as usual, from these to sort of cue us up, but if you want to do more reading, I heavily recommend that website as a resource for this kind of thing. So, the first documented accounts of Las Plagas date back to ancient Africa when a colony infected livestock being reared by the Endopia tribe. These animals mutated into, quote, ancient BOWs, which later escaped and massacred their masters. These monsters then turned on each other and hunted themselves to extinction, but by this point, the royal Endopia city was all but abandoned, and without any new hosts, the Plagas went dormant and became fossilized into ancient rock. This is something that we'll talk about a little bit later when we get to RE5, but in terms of the overall history, obviously that's quite important. When it comes to RE4, they weren't encountered again until their discovery in a rural region of Spain by the Los Illuminados, hundreds of years later. The Los Illuminados were a religious movement that developed a dark religion and sigil, in fact, based around the appearance of the parasite. Once exposed, the parasites quickly took over the group and formed a hive mind-like consciousness, leading to their eventual persecution and exile by the royal Salazar family. Plagas on their own are weak and need a host organism to survive. If they cannot locate a suitable vessel, they grow weak and will die in a short period of time. They attack nearby living things indiscriminately in order to seek out new hosts and sustain themselves. The parasite works by attaching itself to the victim's nervous system, working its way through to settle between the lungs and the heart, before maturing and eventually gaining control of the host's central nervous system. The parietal lobe of the brain is mainly affected, and the parasite continues to control the body by wrapping itself around the spinal cord. Pretty gross stuff. But yes, let's talk about the origins of Las Plagas then. The Salazar family and the Sadler family deep origins, and I think one of the best things about RE4, one of the things that people don't talk about, is how it's like the environmental storytelling thing, right? You get it a lot in classic Resident Evil games in particular, but you go through the mine and you can get, the game doesn't just outright tell you necessarily, but you can see that this is where the Plagas are being dug up from. You can see fossilized Plagas and stuff like this, so we get kind of a hint of this origins here. James, what do you think about Las Plagas and prehistory?
Oh boy, sigh.
Here we go.
Yeah, this is my favorite part. This is my favorite thing about Plagas because it is incredible in terms of what they could do or might do. I don't know, like in the future if they ever want to kind of retouch on it. Because it's ancient, it's millions of years old. Like, I mean, that is, it's fossilized, and we'll talk about the remake a little bit later, which I in my opinion, adds on it rather than changes things. But,
okay.
It's like, this is something that originated in Africa, right? And it localized in Western Africa at the time, and then kind of moved by its own. We're not really sure, are we, how it moved to Europe? Right. It just kind of appeared at some point, whether that be by travel of the queen or mother plaga or not. We're not sure if there are several of them. I just find that fascinating because, I mean, the human race since the 1980s, I think, is when it was confirmed, we originated from Africa as well. I think that...
And I think the Endopia tribe are kind of implied to be like humanity's origins, like earliest humans.
And that's really cool. Like that I don't know if they meant to do that. It's just like maybe the Plaga were instrumental in our expansion throughout the world, and that is really exciting. And could be something that they work on. Are we in the Resident Evil universe? Are humans actually just subordinates, to this thing that predates history? And I'm going to say, wouldn't be a virology or really a podcast with me on it without me going wild with the lore assumptions. But, this is something that just appeared one day just based on what we kind of have been told and what we know by localized plaga in places and kind of this very alien kind of organism that we've, other than maybe cordyceps, but it's still not the same, we don't really have anything like it on Earth. So I'm wondering if it is extraterrestrial in some way. And finally, we're going to go to Resident Evil Space.
No.
no, but
the planet of the Plagas.
I am being genuine though. When it would be really cool if they don't need to touch on it because I don't think we need to go to space in Resident Evil. But like a cosmic origin for this, like a panspermia kind of situation, where like one of the theories of us being here, right, is we hijacked a comet and then our kind of life forces or the elements of life were dropped on the planet. That's in our real world, and I'm wondering if they kind of worked with that without actually saying it, in because it connects to Africa and our origins and it's spreading and stuff like that. It's very cool. And it would be dope if things did come from space. Space is cool, but also like it's to add on to it. I mean, we'll go into a bit more later, but faith is an incredible motivator of everybody that's involved with Plaga.
That's true.
And the one God, etc., etc. It's something that is all around the planet. Depending on the religion you follow, there tends to be just one, or one Almighty, and maybe they were trying to hit on something there with the Queen or Mother Plaga. That is the creator, in some way.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't think we'll ever get anything like that, like in terms of lore, but it's still interesting to think about when you connect it to all the other dots in our real world and within Resident Evil.
Yes, I agree with a lot of that, and also wonderfully disagree with it as well. So I love the explained modern science of classic Umbrella stuff when you find out we started putting these animals together to see what would happen because we wanted this from it specifically. You can kind of see some amount of logic to the majority of the more important BOWs. I know Zero gets a little bit weird with it, or rather, maybe they're just secondary infectants and stuff like that. Anyway, in the weeds. But I love the logic and explanation behind it. And this is a great contrast to that, because it's this ancient, mysterious, almost alien-like, as in outer space, but also almost alien-like, as in alien, kind of unknowable thing. And I actually really like the idea that, no, this is just something that's been on Earth this whole time. Could be on real life Earth for all we know. But in Resident Evil's universe, at least, the origin is it was just here. And its history, we know it stretches back to ancient humans, potentially even further. What caused it to be fossilized or whatever, who knows? Cataclysmic events, the Pangea and all, classic ancient history tales that it might have been locked away from all that time. The as Choji said in chat, the dumb archaeologist opening something meme of being like, "Oh, what's this?" And oh, cool, you've screwed your entire community. It's super interesting, and I love that it's mysterious, because the Umbrella stuff is really cool that it's explained. But this added this kind of ability to theorize about this sort of thing. It's a whole different string to the bow, and it kind of grounds things in that way by having this strange origin of just like, no, this is just potentially, as far as we know anyway, just something in the world. Umbrella can make whatever they want and mad science stuff, but no, just horrible things can exist. And
you can't beat nature.
Yeah, absolutely. Nature is scary, and both games make reference to that. There are files which just list real life parasites, famous real life parasites, of course, with terrifying Latin names. The cordyceps and stuff that get inside of animals and kind of puppet ants up to the tops of grass, of course, famously to be eaten, and all this stuff. Scary stuff.
Can I add something as well?
Sure.
Add a couple things. So there is the reason I came to kind of this maybe extraterrestrial or maybe not is because I think, what's it called? It's the Illuminato's final chapter. The last line of it is, "At last we shall exceed the stars in the sky." Mm-hmm. In it, and the literal image is a tree-like plaga reaching to to space. As if it wants to go back, maybe. But
interesting.
Yeah, again, I'm just spitballing. I'm just being James. So
Yeah, the remake has a bunch of stuff like, and obviously we'll talk about it later a little bit more, but some changes potentially to the Plaga stuff. But that one was really, really interesting, and obviously a bit more of description in terms of the Sadler family and their kind of history with it. Steve, what do you make of the prehistory origins of Las Plagas? Space or not?
I like it being homegrown, personally. The way James is talking about a piggybacked life form, I'm going to, of course, reminded me of the mitochondria and their entire thing in Parasite Eve. So there's your nod to Parasite Eve. Amazing game. Generally speaking, I love that Earth is riddled with these ancient, deadly mysteries.
Yeah,
and we haven't truly seen what a vanilla Plaga can do, because the ones we've seen have been altered and upgraded by Sadler, or in some instances, I guess Luis Serra, used to be a cop in Madrid.
I've heard that.
Yeah. The only way I could see it, if it's a traditionally just an African-born thing, it would have to be like a volcanic eruption or an earthquake or Pangea. But if it's like, what if it's not? What if it's literally just like, the African strain, the Spanish strain? There could be like, an Alaskan strain. That is equally terrifying, that there are different variants of Las Plagas that can do different things. And the only reason we know it as Las Plagas is because we've interacted with it first in Spain. Ancient organisms are like totally the thing. Like, you look at Resident Evil as a whole now, where it's technically tied to the Stairway of the Sunflower, again in Africa, which is still an ancient organism in the middle of a flipping cave that got turned into all these fantastical things and became basically the canvas from which James Marcus and everyone else did paint. So that I'm entirely fine with. The only bit that's kind of a bit rubbish is, like, you know, all of a sudden they infect their first hosts in Spain and, like, we will form a cult. That implies, and this cult will then, like, elevate it. Because I've never seen any hint of, like, an overarching hive mind until the remake of that is. Like, a hive mind intelligence of Las Plagas. That comes in later, or at least in terms of the way I see it. In Vanilla RE4, it's an ancient parasite that Sadler has weaponized to turn people into his cattle, to manipulate people. And at least from my perspective, the cult itself is more of a front for him to get people to do what he wants. But that now it's flipped on its head, and that the Plagas inspired the cult, and then the cult gets shut down by Salazar's great ancestor. And then just Sadler just rocks up one day and goes, "Hey, Salazar, you want to cause some shenanigans?" It's a bit of a shame, really. The actual creatures themselves are absolutely, like, alien coded, though. You put a little organism in someone's body, and then that body is essentially a host for an organism. That, all right, it doesn't chest burst out unless you shoot them in the head a few times, but it does weaponize the body and turn it into something else. Yeah. And this is incredibly gratuitous in, like, when you shotgun someone in half in Remake 4, it's tendrilled all throughout them. They are now a complete, like, different thing underneath. That's amazing. Like, infestation on a level, like you said, do we know if the people are still alive in there and all that? My only query, really, is how we got from 1 or 2 fossils to an entire fleet of the things, because there's no big cloning factory anywhere. And is it just like they've got that many fossilized on the ground, and they just go, all right, embryo into this person, into this person, into this person? Now, I know it's like a vaccine or some kind of fake disease they kind of pull on the villagers to infect the initial load, right? But it's...
Don't they release spores?
I think they do release spores, yeah, but then there are people passing vaccines around. People do get jabbed throughout the village. It's not just like the miners are the initial ones, yes.
Oh. This is, like, it could also be, because it's also changed over the hundreds of years as well. It could also be the virus is the plaga has what's the word?
Evolved?
Adapted. Yeah.
I want to see them come back as a competitor species to stuff like the molded. I want to see, if they do have an intelligence, I want to see these intelligences interact. But we're getting into the mega weeds. Basically, yes, I really am a fan of the old laws.
Yes, I'm with you on that. And I think, when it comes to the first round of Sadler versus Salazar action and the Los Angeles cult kind of origins before Resident Evil 4, hundreds of years before Resident Evil 4, I do really think that it was just the case of, they discovered something strange, and then, they made the cult around it because they didn't understand it. And that's kind of how ancient religions are founded. They just go, this is an incredible discovery that our science or understanding, or our faith, I guess more appropriately, can't explain. Bow down, create a symbol, and now we worship this thing. So there is that part to it. But yeah, I get what you mean, totally. Let's talk about Resident Evil 4 then, which, in terms of a lead up, yes, after being sealed below Salazar Castle after that event, the Plagas remained there until the early 21st century, when they were excavated by the 8th Salazar Castellan Ramon, who was being brainwashed by a new generation of Los Illuminados led by Sadler. The mature Plaga had fossilized by the time Ramon broke the seal, but the larval Plagas had gone into stasis, preserved in a spore-like form. After some time passed, the townspeople of the local village participating in the excavation began suffering convulsions, and then from there turned into violent savages. This was because they had ingested the Plaga spores whilst mining beneath the castle, birthing new parasites inside of their bodies. Because the Plagas can infect a wide variety of life forms and their social relationship maintains over various infected species, the Los Illuminados took advantage of this by experimenting on various animals, insects and humans to create monsters. Scientist Luis Serra develops what was known as the dominant strain Plaga, or control Plaga, a master organism capable of complete control and manipulation over the regular subordinate species. So, that's a little bit more in terms of what we were just talking about there. let's dig into that kind of stuff. And specifically, I guess the first question is, what do we think of the Plagas in RE4 and how they were used in regards to the story, both the events that we see on screen and, of course, the background stuff about Salazar and Sadler, the dominant and subordinate Plagas and stuff like that. Steve?
How long do you think this has been going on for? Like, how long had the cult been kicking around?
You mean since Osmond rocked up?
Yeah.
Yeah, I always wondered that.
Like, if we go in with, like, pilfering a bit from Remake Timeline and that, Louis Sira was ex-Umbrella, that means at least, like, 98. So, what, 7 years tops? That's still a significant amount of time, and it feels like they haven't developed enough. Like, yes, okay, you kill about 1,000 odd Gananas throughout the entirety of the game, but it doesn't feel like they're that, I don't know, populated for a thing of 7 years. But I'm probably overthinking that a bit. My only real concern is the chicken and egg stuff. Like, how did they have control of these, like, savages before the dominant Plaga was around? Like, did Sadler go, you know what, none for me, until we've got a very special edition? He's just sat there at the back, just looking at all this chaos, going, not going to control it until one's ready, thanks.
Yes, and I think, not to put cart before the horse, but in terms of one of the changes to the remake, that's one thing I don't like, because in the original timeline, Sadler is very much, it's not really shown on screen, admittedly, but he's not, huffing his own BS. Like, this is all a ruse. He's a scientist, first and foremost, so he must have some kind of understanding or theories for how this thing works. Because, yeah, he would absolutely have to formulate a plan about knowing about these things, brainwashing Ramon to dig them up, then getting Luis in to create the dominant version, then infecting everyone and saying, take this thing and you'll be cleansed, as we see again in the credits. That's quite a plan, and fingers crossed for things to go well, I will say.
What if Louis doesn't crack it and is just like, the cattle Plaga, the subordinates just wandering around causing mayhem? It would be a complete
well, I guess there's no skin
plan.
on Sadler's nose.
Oops, I've turned the entire, populace into mindless lunatics. Let's unleash them on the world to get our own back on America for some reason. Okay, not to dig too much into Sadler's plan, but yeah, he's banking on a lot. I feel like the fact that we get into the twisted science a bit late, but at least we do get some, and it causes horrific experiments, is great though. Like the quote unquote, is it the Type 2 and then Type 3s? I know, not to be confused with the Type 2 Plagas later on in Wesker's stuff. But the fact that they tried to perfect it, even though they've already got it throughout the majority of, if not the entirety of their forces, is pretty cool.
James, any thoughts on RE4's story in regards to the Plagas?
I think that because there's something that the Resident Evil, where we get our information from, Resident Evil podcast, their website, they say quite a lot, and I really like it. And I forgot that it was a thing where when you are infected by the Plaga and you are controlled by the Plaga, it cannot learn any new skills. It can only learn what you have learned as a person.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that's the same for dominance as well. Like, yes, they might be they're only dominant of they're only dominant of the subs, They can't, I'm wondering if they can't go any further than that. And based on that, I wonder if they've lost their actual way, if they've lost a way to actually have consciousness. So, when they become a dominant, when Sadler becomes the master dominant, there isn't really any thoughts. It's just, we might hear the words because the words are all he said. They're all he knows. So I'm wondering if he is just saying stuff because that is what the Plaga is telling him to do, because that's all the Plaga knows. And that's all the Plaga, because that's how it proliferates, right? Is through that kind of sermon-esque, chanting.
And of course, Yeah, of course it knows that because there was a cult dedicated to it at one point. So
Yeah.
it's learnt that maybe.
Chicken and egg situation.
Right. So I'm wondering if that is the reason, which makes it quite sad, really, for
It's really
Sadler,
interesting.
in a way.
I never considered that he might not be in full control himself. Like the game it obviously implies that he's the big bad because you need a big boss to fight. But I suppose you could still ask the question there, like he's still got that in him. So yeah,
You have to ask the question: are the Plagas sentient enough to be the ones in charge? Like and that's a question that we, in the best possible way, don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know the answer.
Absolutely.
And like, imagine if that was like the big reveal. Obviously not RE9. It's set in Raccoon City. If there's Plagas there, we've really like something's going off. Then all of a sudden Leon turned out he didn't cure himself in RE4, and oh my god, evil Leon. No, right. But like, if they had their own will and they've been biding their time to take over this cult and then take over the world, I guess that in some way gives Sadler credence to why his plan is to F up America. But it's still a bit... I can believe it more of remake Sadler, that he's dominated by a Plaga, so much that I don't believe OG Sadler is. He's too smug in comparison to the Ganados.
I mean, there's no like denying that he could have still been a bad person, beforehand, and he was still a smug piece of poo-poo, right? But like, it's an interesting thing, and it leads on to my next thing, which was, I'm wondering if naturally, I'm not sure actually, I could be, has there been a naturally occurring dominant, or has it only been genetically modified?
No, as far as we know. It's been created only.
Because I'm wondering if there was a natural, and that's how they controlled them. If there was a natural evolution of it, like, because if Louis Serra can do it, I'm wondering if nature could do it like all those years ago as well. Like for the Empire.
His scientific acumen. That guy made the Nemesis apparently.
I love Louis Serra, but the arrogance of man is a thing constantly.
Absolutely.
Parasites in real life, do they have like communes, and do they work?
It tends
in
not
groups?
to be like a hierarchy.
Yeah.
No,
it's
no,
all self, like find host and then life is great. So the fact that these are communal is still like something, even if it is artificial via the dominant and subordinate Plaga. Like if the original like Plagas are like running amok and just pure chaos, then this scientific experiment is what makes them into something else.
Yeah, lots of really interesting questions there. Definitely.
I will like touch on as well that I'll just reiterate what I said at the beginning. I really do like the differences here in terms of the narrative of the original games and RE4 and RE5, any game that has Plagas in it, or the show did, where there is a clear difference between the absolute mayhem of the virus and the although it doesn't feel like it definitely is because there's a hierarchy, the order of Plagas, and that's something that's very interesting to me, because it's too different. It's another reason why I think it's kind of turned, why it might have resonated with a lot of people, because it made it different but also very familiar at the same time.
Yeah, for my tastes, when it comes to RE4's Plagas story, I probably would have liked a little bit more on screen, but I did like what we had and the stuff that... I think I'm honestly guilty of this, but I think a lot of people are guilty of not giving RE4 its just desserts for how interesting the sort of story is behind the scenes, the stuff that's not happening when Leon's jumping out of windows and stuff. The files and obviously stuff in Wesker's report and all these bits and pieces when it comes together into a greater whole. And that's very much what it is. Small morsels that make something really interesting overall. Sadler pulling the wool over Ramon's eyes is a really cool, dark thing. And I've mentioned the credits multiple times, but that converting of the townsfolk whilst pretending to be a religious leader thing is really messed up in a cool way. In terms of the wider impact of RE4's Plagas story on the series, I'm a big fan of this because it kind of makes total sense that weapon sellers and sort of weapons designers would see this and would want samples of the parasite because, they want to be able to the whole thing is BOWs, weapon. The W stands for weapon. Zombies, useless cannon fodder. That, obviously those were kind of not intentionally made, but you could put parasites in people and potentially control them. We've seen it been done, or rather maybe we've heard whispers on the wind, leakers from the government maybe, but obviously this gets out into the black market and there is a certain demand for it, absolutely. A loyal army of monsters that can spread itself amongst your enemies. It's brutal in theory, but of course the flaws of the Plaga in RE4, it has weakness to light, the time it takes to infect someone, it doesn't, as James said, have the ability to learn anything that its host didn't already know in terms of performing additional tasks and stuff. Kind of stop it from getting totally out of control. So in that way, it was sort of genius writing at the time, because they almost put like a lid on what this thing was potentially capable of. Let's not go too far with it. We'll get to RE5 in a minute. But what I'm saying is it'd be so easy to create the ultimate virus and then not know where to write next, because it means the end of the series, which is why we've never gone back to T-Abyss. It's too powerful. Yeah. But I like that Plagas was terrifying, but had immediately obvious weaknesses. That made it super interesting, and also made it, unlike, not that the other viruses didn't have their weaknesses as well, but it made it more believable that it was just a discovery, that it was a thing that has been tampered with, rather than something that's been outright created and cooked up from scratch in a lab, or very much cooked up over much time, like a lot of Umbrella stuff. This feels like it's been put together in a slapdash kind of manner, and that's what makes it scary as well. Let's talk about the results of the Plagas and what we see in Resident Evil 4, the BOWs, your favourites, your least favourites, what you think about the consistency, perhaps, and the variety of them. James, anything stand out to you in terms of Plagas-infected monsters in RE4?
Oh, yeah, like the Verdugo is just standout. Mm-hmm. Like, in terms of... it's going to be a favourite of mine anyway, isn't it? Because, I think we all know...
I don't know why.
I think we all know, it was also one of the...
It looks like the Predator.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, it looks like Yautja. That's the reason. It was one of the reasons that I was... Because the Verdugo is very, very extraterrestrial looking. Like a humanoid insect. That is something we've not seen. Which, with a carapace and malicious intent.
With a carapace and malicious
intent. Well, intelligence, at least.
New Twitter bio just dropped.
It's so good to look at that thing. And I think the Novistadors as well. Very they stand out, and the Regenerators obviously like huge standouts, but very annoying, but super scary. I remember playing the original game and just like most of the time just avoiding the Regenerators if I could, because they're just so threatening, and the Verdugo doesn't give you that chance. You just you have to fight that guy, but one of them anyway. Could you imagine fighting both of them? Oh my word. Yeah,
bring it on. Can I have ice, please? I need some ice canisters, like, right now.
If I was to think of, like, kind of least favorites or kind of weak points, this is going to sound strange, maybe, but, like, I feel like sometimes the Ganados, they can feel a little bit too human. They can kind of blend into the background sometimes. They can reduce that kind of the horror aspect of the parasite itself. And like also on top of that, at the same time, like the hive mind aspect, I think is actually incredibly underused. Like in gameplay, I mean. Because all we really hear them say is just repeating Sadler, Sadler, or, waving their arms in the air, like saying wanky Spanish, But yeah, so I would have liked, it would have been cool, if we saw some kind of connection there. Say if like a chainsaw, I think there is a little bit of it, but not enough. Say if a chainsaw dude came up, which in my opinion should be up in the hierarchy maybe, right, or any of the higher Ganados, it would have been cool for one of them to call on the group and then to go after you. That would have really reinforced the hive mind that they were kind of going for. What else? Yeah, I like in terms of just overall the BOWs. There, despite what I just said about the Ganados, overall, the BOWs in RE4 and just the Plagas incredibly, they give you a sense of tension constantly, which is you always want in a horror survival game or survival horror game. Very realistic. I know that term is maybe overused at sometimes, but it feels quite realistic in how they their heads blow up and you don't know what you're going to get next. And I think the life cycle is well respected as you go through as well, which can add to the consistency, and it's got good variety as you go through. But that's my overall views on the BOWs.
Fair. I've talked about this a little bit before with RE5. I think that's really where it loses itself. But this is kind of the beginning of Resident Evil kind of doing monsters for monsters' sake, for my tastes. And I know you could probably quite easily argue that about some of the older stuff, definitely. But this is why I said, consistency in this. Because the justification for a lot of the stuff in RE4 is just kind of flimsy. And there's no consistency between them. Except, an obvious flailing weak spot in the back. I really wish they'd gone to some measure to explain how the Plagas is a binding agent between DNA better. Like the Verdugo is human and insect or whatever, for example. And, Del Largo, big salamander, which is big for some reason. And, don't forget, El Gigante, big man. Why is he big? Because he's big man. That's about as far as you get.
Felt like
big man. It's big guy. We binded the Plagas with a DVD box set of Lord of the Rings. Anyway.
Wow, yes. You are right. It did come out 3 years before.
At the time.
It was the style. It's literally just, it's just that. But I'm being silly and facetious. I'm being facetious, of course. But for me, it's much easier to... and this might just be my point of view, visualize how a virus could change something's DNA to make it big and more snarly. But the Plaga, it's so vividly, in fact, as I did earlier, so well described in terms of, it wraps itself around the host's spinal column and it does this and that. It's like, yeah, okay, but how does using that, and I'm sure they probably just mean a part of the Plaga, or the part of its mind, or part of its brain or whatever, some of its spores. I just wish we'd had a bit more explanation of the actual science of the POWs. And whilst I love the mystery of the origins of the Plagas, this is where I'm like, yeah, but I like the pseudoscience in Resident Evil, and this is where you start to lose it. At least we have the minimal justifications of insect and Plagas, which is an RE5 you don't get. All of that said, some of the monster designs in RE4, of course, are some of the most iconic designs in the series. The Verdugo, the Garrador, and so on, have gone on to be beloved creatures, and I would agree with that assessment. I think they're great, and maybe sometimes it's okay, and we should just put gameplay first. And I think you can have cake and eat it. I think you can put gameplay first and then try and explain it, even if it's kind of flimsy. I'll take that over nothing. But for people that it doesn't bother, I completely understand it, because the designs are great, the boss fights are great. And it's a fun game. But always be a little bit of a sore spot is the kind of origins of the BOWs in 4. Because they're so good as well. I think it's because they're so good. I wish I knew more about how this thing came to
be. Yeah, you want more.
Yeah, I want more
because
from
you
this,
like looking at them. Yeah,
right. Other than just it's a cool fight with a guy that can't see you, so you got to sneak around and shoot him on the back. It's like, that's neat. Why is he like that? Del Largo though, rubbish, absolute rubbish. He's a salamander, but he got really big. It's just crap. Steve, thoughts on the POWs, the Plagas POWs from RE4?
Generally speaking, I am on board with the majority of what Mikami is putting down here, but but I am in the camp of Gyarados and Del Largo are a bit wank. Not to be all right, intimidating sound, unsheathing sound of claws. I get the mechanics, I get the terror, but he is also absolutely bloody ridiculous. And again, the catfish fight. Oh, it's for the time, novel idea. You're trapped on a boat. and you have to spear this thing before it kills you. Okay, fair. It is just a giant grey blob with mouth. That's not really all that appealing. The Ganados, though, all right? They go, but they have a variety of weapon, a variety of speech. They are like, sometimes slow, sometimes fast. I think they communicate a little bit. They're not the most obviously tactile, except for maybe when you go in that one shack and they go, "Get the chainsaw." Yes, Jeff. I'll get the chainsaw.
Jeff the chainsaw.
Yeah, exactly. And they manipulate power tools. That is amazing. But also, oh dear, what have you done? You've shot this guy in the head, and now he's got a tentacle. And that tentacle reaches 20 feet and bites your goddamn head off. The first time that happens, you are sat in your chair going, "What the F?" And in the best possible way. Like those bits where the quote-unquote more alien aspects of it. That's the really cool bit. That's the bit that I'm like, yes. Obviously, everyone goes on about how the regenerators are pretty neat. Yeah, sure. Okay, cool. But I'm kind of more of a Verdugo guy. I'm more of a Pasanta guy in that case. I'll tell you one BOW I wish I knew more about that we never get any lore on, though. Why is there a giant plant at the top of Salazar's castle that just is apparently the Queen Plaga now and can turn man and Verdugo into beast thing willy death monster? End scene.
Because the gameplay demands it.
Yeah, that's it though, isn't it? Like much like Garador, it's just there because it's fun to fight against. And much like, literally, I think El Gigante is a style at the time. Little Lord of the Rings was popular at that point. Let's have a fight against a Balrog, or whatever the frigate is. Sorry, I've never seen the film, I've read the books.
Fair. Cool. All right. Before we move on to RE5, let's talk about Remake just a little bit at least. If anyone has any thoughts on the changes that it made to the Plagas in particular. Obviously, it makes changes to various pieces of the story, but talking about the Plaga specifically, the most obvious one is the introduction of the Amber Plaga, which is like a dominant Plaga trapped in a bit of rock, Jurassic Park style that everyone's kind of like ooh about, but you don't really know too much about what it is other than the fact that it potentially, as James kind of alluded to earlier, is a naturally occurring dominant species. That's the implication. Steve, what do you make of Remake 4's changes to the Plagas?
It's better than an analogous word that is just the sample. It's a bit more compelling in hindsight. I think that's fine. I mostly like what 4R brings to the table in terms of new combatants, to be honest with you. Especially like literally the Gloria de la Plaga, where it makes you feel like Leon's Plaga himself is going to pop out and just F the game up right there. The way that Pasanta messes with Ada's head and gets into her mind and puts distortions and stuff. That whole herb getting infected in the first place is entirely something new anyway, but that it works in such a compelling way, and it's a shake up to the game mechanics, which we gotta appreciate. The level of gore on the poor Ganados makes it look just how twisted the actual Plagas are on them now. That in itself is interesting. I cannot for the life of me remember the name of the giant indestructible creature that's in the Umbrella Lab, though. That's Plaga based as well, isn't it?
The new thing.
Yeah.
I can't remember. I'll look it up.
But that is in itself, it's something new, so that should be praised, at least for my money, because it's an unkillable monster and they found a way to justify a laser corridor. Jesus wept. It's still better than Umbrella Chronicles' random tentacle man who clings to the ceiling, though. And Talos. They're both wank. Yes, I'm going to say that. I'm going on record as saying 4R's additions are better than whatever Umbrella Chronicles gave to the table in terms of BOWs. Not really a shocker, but also any chance to get a dig against Sergei Vladimir.
Fair. As far as I can tell, and I'm going to keep looking this up, that thing is just called Test Subject.
They have it say like a person's name, doesn't it? Like
I think it, yeah.
Yes, Martinico. There it is. Yeah, it's the name given to an experiment test subject implanted with the dominant species Plaga. He was a test subject, but got a special Plaga put in him. That thing was cool though. I need to go back and play Separate Ways. I haven't played it since it came out, and I remember it being really, really cool. So I don't really have any comments on that. James, do you have any thoughts on how Remake 4 switched things up?
Yeah, like, I mean, majority of, as folks probably gathered by now, majority of what I, going forward, would take, it's just because Capcom, it's what Capcom are doing. You know, they're taking the remakes as, you know, it would be nice. But at the same time, if I'm to explain it away, you know, it's just like, you know, they're building parallel to the lore rather than building up from the lore. You know, they're adding to it in parallel, and it's just I quite like it because it adds a little bit extra explanation of how the Plaga has survived this long, or how it did what it did all those years ago, and why it's so coveted, like in terms of the amber and it being a natural dominant. Yeah, and I quite like, I mean, yeah, you said, I was going to say the thing about the Jurassic Park and Amber thing. I thought we were over that in the 90s and the early noughties.
Never.
But no, we're bringing it back, apparently. Yeah, I always found that quite, I found it so fascinating as a kid, but now it's just like, we don't really do that anymore, do we? I think it's been... yeah, and then, like, again, like I spoke earlier on about, again, I forgot the bloody name of it. What was it called? Yeah, the final chapter, the Illuminatus. This entire freaking passage is dope. You know, it could definitely have. I'm pretty sure, you know, that the dominant Plaga in 4 Remake is the inception of ChatGPT. Just in organic form. Because listen to this: man, woman, or child, his love does not discriminate. Beast, fish, or bird, all creatures shall be equally blessed. Does this not sound like something an AI would make? Praise be to the holy insects. What? We are the humble servants of God. Okay, that makes sense. Like, yeah, and then like to end it with, our prayers will be sung all over the world. They will be heard by all. At last we shall exceed the stars in the sky. Like, what are you talking about, Sadler? Like, it's, but yeah, but it's like just wild enough that it's like, okay, yeah, I get that's why it led me to, you know, and then you got the image of the, do you know the image? This is something I haven't referenced at all, I think, on a podcast, but the image in that book, if you want to go look it up, I will say the name again. It's Illuminados Final Chapter. Illuminados Final Chapter. The image reminds me of and I won't say what it is, but one of the final bosses in Elden Ring. And like, that's sick, because I love that. And it also reminds me of the story of RE4. Like, so I'm wondering if there's a connection between, like, if there was some kind of communication between these two developers, like, or story writers, or if they know each other, like, when they're doing this, because it's very similar to the final boss of Elden Ring. And also the story of Elden Ring is very similar to the Plaga as well. But yeah, I like it. I think I like the additions of 4 Remake. They reinforce a little bit of the ancient history, and we need more of that, because like Capcom was, they're wanting to go back, Marty. They're wanting to go back to the future, right? And they keep trying, and it's always kind of butting up, and it's because they're not elaborating. They're not kind of building it. They don't need to give us answers. They just need to give us more, a little bit more, you know, so we can munch on it more. Yeah, so I'm hoping they do that in the future. Maybe RE9 will give us a little bit more.
I actually, yeah, I'm with Steve in that. I don't think you'd see it in RE9, but I think if we are getting an RE5 remake, I suppose it will be nice to see how they expand that part out, which we're going to talk about now, in terms of Plagas' history and Plagas' future, and that kind of thing. And even, to be fair, we saw it a little bit theorized in with Remake 3, with the Nemesis kind of parasite things on top of zombies' heads that was brand new. And I'm now at the point with the series where very clearly that the I know Capcom sort of farted around it for ages, but it's pretty clear that we have 2 timelines now, and we're doing the remake timeline thing.
Yeah.
It's fine. I have to make peace with that, and that's whatever. And one of the ways I make peace with that is when they arbitrarily change things. It doesn't mean the Dark Side Chronicles isn't canon anymore. It just means Dark Side Chronicles doesn't take place in the remake timeline, which consists of, 6 or 7 games currently or whatever. So yes, there is that aspect to it. So be interested to see if we do get a 5 remake, how they build upon this, the implications in remake 4 about the Amber, about potentially space, about the Sadler lineage, maybe even that kind of thing. And now, reading the file Type 2 Plagas from Resident Evil 5, J. Salazar VA, who you can find on Casting Call Club at Jared Salazar VA.
As stated in earlier documentation on the subject, the original Las Plagas parasite was discovered in an isolated area in Europe. Upon maturation in a host, the parasite quickly replaces the host's will and self-awareness, rendering them highly susceptible to control by another. It was this aspect of Las Plagas that meant one so inclined could create obedient subjects who would obey directives without question. With obvious commercial application possibilities, Las Plagas quickly came under review by interested parties. The problem with commercializing Las Plagas was the time discrepancy between initial infection and when the hosts were rendered susceptible to control. The time between when Las Plagas is administered to the host as an egg and the time when it fully matures and attaches itself to the control nervous system was met with negative criticism. The maturation cycle of Las Plagas is relatively brief, but potential customers wishing for more expedient results. With this in mind, research was undertaken to improve Las Plagas, the final result of this research becoming Type 2 Plagas. Type 2 Plagas differs from its predecessor in that it is administered in its mature state, and from that point, the host can almost immediately be controlled. Type 2 is administered orally, or more specifically, it is forced into the mouth of the host. It's an indelicate method, but it's also the most effective. After oral administration, Type 2 rends the esophagus and moves first to the medulla oblongata, then to the brain proper, and finally the spinal cord. Once it has taken hold of the central nervous system, the host can be controlled. Under a laboratory setting, we recorded complete control of a host within 10 seconds of administration of Type 2. Aside from the reduced infection time, the Type 2 Plagas appeared to share all of the characteristics of the original Las Plagas, which made it more than suitable for commercialization. All that remains now is to simulate field data from the Kijuju Autonomous Zone. Listed below are the 3 key experiments for evaluation of Type 2. 1. Infection. Administer Type 2 samples to 10 previously infected individuals and observe the rate at which they spread the infection. These 10 test subjects must be given enough Type 2 samples to create measurable results. 2. Control. Observe to what extent the barbaric behavior induced by the Plagas can be controlled. This will be ascertained by witnessing the results of the directive to engage the BSAA operatives within the area. 3. Fighting. Accumulate data on Type 2 in combat. Type 2 hosts will battle BSAA operatives deployed in the area. This experiment will be the last stage for evaluating the effectiveness of Type 2 Plagas.
But let's talk about Resident Evil 5. It's worth noting, lore-wise, streamlined forms of Plagas were created through genetic engineering to make more effective weaponry. Once the Plaga became known to the world at large, their Their potential for military application was obvious, as it theoretically meant one so inclined could create obedient subjects that would obey directives without question. It was this specific trait that ensured the Plagas very quickly came under review by interested parties. Both pharmaceutical giant Tricell Incorporated and later a science team working under Eastern Slav's president Svetlana Belikova, geez, easy for me to say, worked on ways to artificially create new Plagas to counter the problem of Las Plagas, which is, as I've said, its weakness to light and so on, using genetic manipulation to make the Plagas a true POW, resulting in the Type 2 and the Type 3 and so on. So yes, let's talk about how Resident Evil 5 deepens the Plagas, if you think in fact it does, and how we feel about it. Steve, what do you reckon?
The main thing for me is the uptake in the infestation time. It's horrifying that it can literally just be deposited in a person's mouth, and within the space of a minute, they have gone from being themselves to them being a puppet to the parasites. Like, the only thing that 5 really gets wrong in terms of this, at least for me, is you never really get an indicator of how they're being controlled. I know it's meant to be implied that Irving is, but how? I don't see a wibbly staff. Where's the wibbly staff? Like, put on some robes or something, Jesus. And then he transformed into a random, like, crocodile tentacle thing because Las Plagas.
Reasons.
Yeah, it's a bit but the actual deployment of it is horrifying. When what was it called? The Kaguju blog by that random dude in the Run to 5, and all the evil stuff that happens to that town is happened over the course of like a handful of weeks. It's longer. It's a longer time than you'd expect. It's not like happened in the 5 minutes since Chris and Sheva have turned up. It's been happening for a while, but they've been keeping it somehow on the down low, just infesting people. And considering how quickly it gets, and the fact that this man gets out alive somehow, it's pretty, obviously mechanically, they fundamentally work the same in game, don't they? We're going to hurl obscenities this time in African at you and lob weapons at you. They're not mechanically that much different. I think that's how they control the lickers, in quotation mark. So yes, the Plagas are being used on classic bioweapons as a leash. Makes sense. Like, you could theoretically have a cadre of zombies that you then put Plagas into, and then you're Paul W.S. Anderson, and then you're a hack. But it's technically doable. That's what Type 2 shows. You can control a BOW. Is they've got names that I cannot pronounce, and I don't want to be disrespectful, but the bat caterpillar thing, is that a Plaga creature? Or is that just the melding of species is now a thing that feels more traditional Umbrella, or at least it feels it, like in for example, the Chimera. But there's none of the real, like, besides the Magini, the rebrand of Canado, and I guess Ndesu, the El Gigante's Gel Gigante. There's not really much of the old guard crocodile. Where's the new take on a Garador? Instead, we've got guys in grass skirts being very, very not appropriate.
Yes. Yeah, all that stuff I said earlier about making it a flawed kind of parasite, well, goes out the window here. And what's frustrating about that with RE5 is that RE5 has so much other stuff going on with the progenitor and Ouroboros in the plot that Las Plagas is just kind of, it becomes that's also here, even though it's got all these new monsters and the monster, infection rate is really quick and they can survive in light and stuff. Like, this should be the sequel to Las Plagas. And unfortunately, it's kind of like the bronze medal of viral things that's going on in this game, which is not overstuffed. That sounds like I'm a detriment to RE5. I really like RE5's story. But it's a bit of an also-ran, because the progenitor stuff is going to get people's attention more in terms of a diehard audience, and Wesker just keeps going Ouroboros over and over again, so you think the game is more about that, and perhaps it is, obviously, it's one perspective. It's unfortunate, really, because in the early game, before we get to Wesker, it's really striking. Steve said, the infected by mouth scene, very memorable, because it looks great and gnarly, even today. It's a shame. I think the most interesting things in terms of Las Plagas and RE5 is the stuff that you don't see on screen, which is the implications about prehistory stuff that we talked about earlier in this podcast. Here's where it came from. a bit more than underground in Spain, which is what we knew up at this point. We also now know that it goes even further back thousands, millions of years back in ancient Africa, which is super interesting. And also, here's the future, because we've taken away its weaknesses. So this thing is potentially incredibly powerful and incredibly useful. But don't worry about that. Wesker's here now. It's kind of like, the wind comes out of the sails, unfortunately, with Plagas, because it's set up to be perhaps too big of a deal in this, perhaps too dangerous, as is the way with Resident Evil sometimes, unfortunately. And James, how do you feel about the Plagas in RE5 and how it sort of, deepens it if it does?
Yeah, you hit the talking points. I was going to say it feels diluted.
Yes, great word for it.
Compared to the rest of RE5, which really sucks, because the Plaga is so interesting. If I was just thinking while you were saying that, say if the first aid spray was around at the time and we, after RE4, for instance, and we were doing a podcast and we were talking about RE4, and we would be talking about the, or even the remake, and we would, forget if RE5 didn't come out, we were like, oh, what's the future of the Las Plagas? What's going to happen in the future, with this? And then we got Resident Evil 5. I would be very disappointed.
Yeah. I get it.
Because there's so much you could have done, and we just got, again, a brand new virus.
Yeah.
And it's
sorry, I just want to say that's sort of how I could understand the feeling now after Village as well, where they're like, right, we've given you a bunch of information about the origin of the mold, and we all talked about, where could this go next? And for what it's worth, Requiem looks like it's gone. Anyway, that's the mold done with.
Right,
so,
and
think about it from that perspective,
Yeah, and I made some pretty big I was really excited, because I was like, I don't think this is the only Megamycete. It can't be the only Megamycete. Just wanted this thing. That is wild. An organic library of memories. That's such an interesting concept. And it's like with the Plaga as well, it's a very interesting concept, just like the Megamycete, that goes back the Megamycete we know a little less about in terms of its history. But the Plaga, we could have learned more about the Megamycete, but that's probably going to come in a few months' time when we revisit Village. But with the Plaga, we got all this prehistory stuff, not much explained, and we got Resident Evil 5, and it didn't really explain anymore. It was just like, okay, we're just going to dilute it and overrun it with this brand new thing. And as you said, Wesker's here now. We just got more dominant stuff, and now we don't need a wibbly staff, and we got the lickers. I think that was a new thing, wasn't it? The fact we learned that lickers can be controlled by the sound frequency of the way the Plaga, because it has such an incredible organ for hearing. I wanted more about it. It's interesting that we got to see it actually being used in a military combat situation, and we got a little bit of a snapshot of what it was like for those ancient Indopaya people all those years ago when the Plaga came out, but unfortunately it just wasn't taken advantage of in a great way.
The other thing about RE5 then, and we touched on it a little bit, but of course we did it for RE4, but for RE5, talk about the BOWs as well and how you feel about the Plagas infected monstrosities in this game. Again, I've said it multiple times, but the strenuous linking in RE4 really falls apart here when the monsters do exist at this point literally for the sake of it. There is no explanation. And sure, Steve, as you said, DNA bonding Plagas can be used to strap random animals together, but it's not explained why you would put a caterpillar and glue it to a bat. It's kind of
everything's just
weird.
Sat there going, you guys are gonna love it.
Right. And I like the idea of the type 3 Plagas as well, which is a splicing together of the dominant and the subordinate species, where it sort of kind of becomes a mess in a game which I wouldn't call a mess, but when you look at how many things it's trying to juggle, inevitably balls are going to be dropped, and everyone remembers RE5 for, as I said, the other stuff going on, not necessarily Plagas or the Plagas BOWs. Overall, not a fan, unfortunately. James, any thoughts on RE5 BOWs?
No.
No.
Yeah, it's there isn't really much, is there? It's like, as you say, it's just a copy paste job. Yeah, so I think you don't see any kind of really unique stuff that I can really say, oh yeah, I really like that, because most of the threats, other than kind of the dominant stuff like Irving and stuff, again, I hate that boss fight. So
I think he might be Ouroboros infected as well, so he's not even Plaga.
No, he injects that little sample. It's got like a little thing in it. The thing he pulls out's got a little like.
Oh, is he? Right.
It's like a sentient little thing.
Cool, thank you.
I don't know what to describe. There's a thing in that little thing he injects himself with.
The thing in the thing.
Yeah,
I understood.
That's literally how everybody's a science.
Perfect example, though, to be fair. It's like he infects himself with a mysterious Plagas thing, presumably, and just becomes a unique monster for reasons.
I'm on water, therefore aquatic themed. If I was, like, for example, in the middle of the city, I'll be made of granite. Like, okay. I have a question, because my memory is fuzzy. Reapers aren't Plaga related, are they? They're like progenitor. The giant bug monsters that can wreck they can push your in.
I will check. I think you're right. They are Ouroboros, actually. So there you go.
See, if they were Plagas, that would make sense, because they would be like a imperfect Verdugo, like analogous. Like, giant deadly bug man shaped thing that absolutely kills Chris in like 2 seconds flat, or your money back.
And they also have kind of a spore cloud around them, don't they?
Yeah,
like a weird.
That would also make sense.
Weird, isn't it?
Oh, that's kind of frustrating now.
Oh man, RE5's the worst.
Hope they don't remake it. Steve, any thoughts on the VOW?
Well, like I said, if the Reaper was one, that would be great. Unfortunately, it's just a case of, here's the greatest hits again, only they're slightly more rubbish. Why is there another person with a sack and a chainsaw in his hand? Because he was in the last game. He was on the box art. Okay, I'm not even going to get into the Indipire tribe. That is messed up. That's inappropriate. I can't, the giant Magini, why? Okay, he's just big now. Yeah, is that meant to be? And Desu, I'm sorry, you're just playing a greatest hits album when I preferred the original anyway, because I'm a hipster. I don't like the screaming on motorbikes either. That in itself is that whole sequence is terrible, but that's by the by.
Yeah,
by the by. Generally speaking, I understand why they're here to a degree, but I'm also trying to figure out why did Wesker want this in his plans in the first place.
Indeed. Okay, cool. Let's talk about the remaining Plagas appearances throughout the series. There isn't that many. Most prominently in Resident Evil Damnation, as alluded to earlier, with President Svetlana Belakova of the Eastern Slav. And we see, quite famously, in that film, Plagas-controlled BOWs fighting amongst each other, which is neat. Tyrants and lickers and stuff. And a couple of other appearances and mentions elsewhere. Steve, anything in particular stand out to you from Damnation or elsewhere?
Obviously, seeing lickers fight tyrants is pretty awesome in the first place. We all got to agree. BOW versus BOW, it's, the basis of all combat. Only a few would choose to life to a weapon. The bit with JD, I think his name is JD. It's been a while since I've watched it. That's sad. That he's slowly becoming, he can't control it anymore. He's going Ganado, for want of a better term. And Buddy, literally, I get shot in the spine and I'm fine, sort of, mobility withstanding. It's kind of a cop-out, really. I feel like no one melted, which is also disappointing. Not true to the game. Yeah, basically what I'm saying is Damnation is more of a spectacle, but it's not how I would like to see Las Plagas be utilised in the future, if at all. It's nice that they are there, and they are at least mostly true to canon. The effects mostly with JD falling apart is the bit that's like, oh, that's in the worst possible way. I get it.
James, any thoughts on Plagas elsewhere?
in Damnation, it's the same situation as RE5, where it's like, okay, you're bringing Plaga back, but you haven't actually done anything with it.
Yeah. Kind of.
Other than just making the Plaga like way more aggressive, I feel like, and violent. Especially based on the transformation. Like I did like I think during our podcast, I said I do like the transformations. They were sick to look at visually. But again, they didn't really add anything to the Plaga that we don't already know. Yeah, it's a little bit of an insult, to be honest. The Plaga is so... It's like the T-Virus at this point. You know, it is an incredibly important part of Resident Evil canon. Like, so when if you just keep bringing it in and you don't do anything with it and don't evolve it or just explain more of it away when you've got this wealth of millions of years to kind of talk about it, it's an incredible missed opportunity. And like even though we've had all this Plaga stuff, we have not had enough.
Well, that was going to be my next question. Yeah. You know, did we get our fill of Plagas up to RE5? Because we haven't, and Damnation, we haven't really seen it since. And would you have liked to seen it again? You know. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Like, you know, I think they wanted to change. I think they wanted to change for different reasons. Than, you know, we had RE5, and then we had RE6, and things were definitely not looking good in terms of the canon after that. So they wanted to change things, but they might. When it comes to the viruses, I think they focused on the wrong thing. I like the mold. The mold is cool, and we'll talk about that at some point. But you know, it would have been cool if we there would have been a connection there with the Plaga in RE7 and Village. You know, because there's definitely they do have parallels, you know, within them. So I definitely want to see more Plaga in the future, whether we'll get that or not, other than a Remake 5, I mean. If we get that. I'm not saying it's the thing that's happening, but yeah, it would nice to have a side game, like a Rev 3 or another Chronicles or something. Right. That kind of goes into it.
Yeah. Something that really focuses on it would be cool, for sure. I, much like sort of, weirdly, The Thing, I would like to see just little stories from through history. Because, in theory, there are Plagas buried under various parts of the Earth, you know, at least 2 different places. So I'd love to see different parts of Resident Evil world history having mini little Plagas outbreaks, maybe, that get controlled some way or another. But no, I don't think, to answer the question of did we get our fill of Plagas, I don't think we did. You know, the RE5 thing, kind of putting it out into words and really thinking about how it really got overshadowed. Feels such a shame that we have not really gone back to it properly. There's so much, not just in terms of the history that they could fill in, and I'd love for them to do that and also still keep it vague enough to speculate about. You can certainly do that. But also just in the present times, like I said, how it works. The regenerator is, we put multiple Plagas into an organism to see what would happen. Okay, but why? What? Huh? You know, explain that a bit more. And there's probably a world out there where RE6 was Plagas focus as well, where Hayos is a giant Plagas monster. I could absolutely see that. I don't really understand why we made the sudden pivot away from it. Maybe there was some backlash to it. Maybe Capcom wanted Resident Evil to be more synonymous with viruses than parasites, because it's, you know, puns aside, in the series DNA a bit more. It seems a shame that we've moved on from it completely, but I don't know. I do wonder if the writers would have struggled to tell new stories with it. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe a cool spin-off movie or something down the line. But it being spliced into other things and overshadowed doesn't help. It needs its focus, definitely. Resident Evil loves to, and I do give it credit for this, taking something that it has and using it as the foundation for the next even bigger threat. So I do wonder if going back to it too much would feel like a bit of a downgrade. But now that we talked about it, I don't know, I feel like it'd be a nice, weird kind of homecoming. Like, oh yeah, do you remember this? we're probably going to have done a lot more than this than we did. Steve, did we get our fill of Plagas at the time? Would you have liked to see more of it? Would you like to see it again?
I would like to see it again. I want to see it do more than just a leashing tool, though. I want to see, like, for example, characters you've known throughout the majority of the game. You're halfway through, and all of a sudden it turns around. Your ally has been turned into an enemy because someone off screen has plagued them. You know, that kind of, like, big plot turn, like, oh no, not Jeff. We liked Jeff.
But Jeff the chainsaw getter.
Yeah. Oh, Jeff, what are you doing? Why? So I don't know why I made that sound vaguely erotic. Sorry. Right. Here's the thing. This is purely because of what we've been talking about and what they can do. And I've been thinking, what would you do with them? And my brain immediately went to the puppet soldier-looking guys in Village. And I'm all of a sudden like, how would you control a militarized force of BOWs without the Plagas? And like that would be the perfect way to get them back in. Like if you have to fight these BSAA dudes, you know, you just think they're just zombie soldiers or whatever, and eventually you pop one head off, and oh god, there's tentacles. That would be a nice surprise reveal. Like that's how they've controlled these, I guess, clones of Chris Redfield or whatever the frig they're meant to be. That'll be at least something, you know. But again, that's just using them as a leashing tool. So yeah, I don't think we've actually seen the end of them. I would like to see them do something slightly new. Maybe learn a bit more about their untampered life cycle. Because we've only ever seen them messed with by, you know, Los Illuminados, for example, or, you know, the Eastern Slav Republic. Ancient organisms, Resi, though, is always my thing. Like, I badly want them to find, like, some kind of ancient organism. It's like the Cheddar Man or something, and it's like, oh my god, it's ancient human. Let's do something. Let's clone it. Let's turn it into a weapon. But that's just by the by. Point is, I absolutely have not had my fill of the little parasites that can't.
Yes, I think you're right in terms of it being a leashing tool, in the sense that it's also implied that the A virus from Resident Evil Vendetta uses the Plagas in some form. Glenn Arias made a deal with Los Illuminados cult members apparently to get the Plagas, which is why the A virus has elements of control to it, and he can control his BOW family members. And I expect we'll see it popping up in that form because controllable BOWs are popular in the storytelling of Resident Evil in a zoomed out fashion, but also it's in the universe now, so logically that would be a desirable thing for weapons manufacturers to have, as we said before. So I think we'll see it there. But yes, I'm with everyone in terms of wanting to give it the spotlight that it probably deserved in RE5, and I do wonder if it will get more of it in an inevitable remake if it does happen. And if it does happen, or in fact perhaps it doesn't even need to be, but we could get a spin-off now. Because RE4 remake, changing things like adding the amber is like planting the seeds for stuff. Like, it's weird that they would add that mysterious block that implies more history than we knew about the Plagas originally and not follow it up in anything. I mean, it wouldn't be all that surprising. It's Resident Evil. They love cliffhangers that go nowhere. But that thing would be prime for a Revelations 3 or whatever, certainly down the line. I guess, just the general... Oh, sorry. Go on, James.
Do you know what would be sick? If if Capcom actually risked it all and were not cowards and actually did a story of Adam Sandler.
Go back in time.
Way back, right? And they gave us a Plaga story with Adam Sandler, because that was Adam Sandler. Adam Sandler.
Yes, Adam Sandler. Why not? Uncut diamonds.
As Adam Sandler.
But that would be sick if we got kind of, because it doesn't really you know, you could still have your horror because it's a new characters that you could get to know. Yeah, you might be going back in history, so it could no, I mean, you're going so far back that it won't really like mess with anything. Just focus it purely on the Plaga. That'd be sick.
The only problem with that, James, of course, is that then the fans can't demand where's Leon because it's set hundreds of years before he was born.
Damn, you're right.
The reveal is that Adam Sadler was Leon's great grandpa.
But I saw Leon with a peg leg on a pirate ship.
Perfect. The last sort of talking point that I had really here, as I kind of implied, is I just couldn't help but think how weird it was looking back on it that we had RE4 introduce the Plagas, RE5 kind of dilute the Plagas, if you like, and then 6 just abandoned them completely and moved in a different direction, moved back to viruses, came up with a new virus that wasn't inspired by the Plagas either. It used G virus and the Veronica virus instead. And then obviously 7 and Village, a grand reset, moving away from them as well. I just wondered if anyone had any thoughts on, the sudden drop of it. Like, we talk about Resident Evil as eras these days, and, maybe perhaps wrongly, we have thought of it as trilogies, 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5, and 6 as the Bioterror era, and now 7, 8, and then whoosh, the hammer comes down before we get to finishing off a trilogy there. But it does seem weird that this second trilogy of Resident Evil is about the Plagas until it suddenly stops being about the Plagas. James, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it sucked. and RE6 sucks, and it also doesn't add anything. Like, so I'm wondering if it was a pure panic moment, I think, from Capcom. It was pure panic. It was like, oh god, people don't like viruses anymore. Oh no, maybe they don't like Plaga anymore either. Let's do something weirder. Let's go in another direction with mold. I think it was purely just panic. And they wanted to change everything about the upcoming game, which I don't think was the right direction to go in. I feel like you could still make a horror game based on Plaga or the virus. I feel like if you switch the mold, it wouldn't have worked with Ethan, but you could have worked around, ran around it. But it could have been something else. I mean, it's pseudoscience, right? You can do anything with pseudoscience. Yeah, but I purely think it was just panic mode. It was like, the fans, the true fans, they don't like it.
Right.
we must appease them.
Steve, do you agree in terms of flipping from parasites back to viruses and then onwards to the mold?
I mean, it's massive cope, but let's be real. The Joavo are like the next step up mechanically in terms of actual things, but even more massive cope. Let me get the whiteboard a second. Okay, right. So this is more due to the fact of Remake 3 going, oh yeah, the Alpha Parasite. It's based on the Las Plagas in that the G virus being in itself inspired, or at least in some way formed by Las Plagas being in Lisa Trevor by way of the any Alpha Parasite, technically means that Las Plagas has not actually left and is actually in RE6's C virus, which is made of the G virus and the T Veronica virus. And my brain is hurting, but that's what Capcom unleashed on us by retconning things, which is fine, but it also means that Joavo are technically still Ganado, and the rebrand was pointless.
I can't bear to talk about Resident Evil 6 anymore. We already did like 7 hours of it. Let's just move on. Well, nothing else remains for me but to thank the panel, our contributors, and our community. Join us on the First Days Brave Discord server to hear the show early, and check out our merch store or our Patreon to support the show. Don't forget that these and our social media links can be found at faspraypod.com. You can listen to the podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all good podcasting apps. And if you like what you hear, please do leave us a review where you can and spread the good word. On our next episode, we wrap up this season and indeed 2025 with our year-end tradition of a quiz. Join us for another round of First Aid Spray's annual chaos with Trivia Challenge Round 7. Thank you to the panel. You can follow the Pueblo people on Blue Sky. I'm at CyWhite, Steve is at FB Steve, James is at Moist Owl, it's OFF, and finally, thank you for listening and have a good week. Have you guys seen? I put this on Instagram. I keep seeing it on Instagram, and it makes me laugh every time, so I had to reshare it. It's a podcast, and they're talking about the Hellraiser series. I don't know if they're talking to the voice actor or what, but they're talking about, or rather, the actor that played Pinhead. But they're talking about the voice of Pinhead, and they're talking about like, oh, it wouldn't work in other accents. Can you imagine a Scouse Pinhead? And it gets me every time where he's like, hey, I'll tear your soul apart, lad. Tell you now. It's so good. Where's our Scouse like Resident Evil villain? I need a Scouse nemesis.
I blew Berg's mind this weekend because I used the term. Well, last weekend I used the term Liverpudlian, and they didn't believe it was a real word. I went, nope, that's a real word.
It's one of those.
I know
fun...
it sounds like a fantasy creature, but
it does, doesn't it? Yeah.
The Scouts are fantasy creatures, but
for some reason, Resident Evil is now set in Liverpool, and like I remember stars like.